Hi, I'm Dimitri. I'm with the Dimitri team, and we do real estate in Florida. So I want to take a minute, actually it'll probably take several minutes, because I want to talk about a purchase contract. So you have found a property and you'd like to make an offer. You'd like to purchase it. Well, one of the most anxious moments is signing that purchase contract. It's long. There's a lot of parts to it, and people really get nervous about it because, you're making a big decision, big number. So let's go over a few items on the purchase contract so maybe it can be a little bit easier for you to understand and get comfortable with. So let's take a quick look here. So in the purchase contract, we simply have who the buyer and the seller are. That's our first part. What's the property address? What's the legal description? So now we've identified basically all the parties, all the property. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to identify how much are we willing to pay for this property. So that's our purchase price. And then how much as a buyer are we going to put down on the property? So basically we're saying, hey, I want to put a deposit on this property. How much am I putting down? So in this case, there was $4,000 that was put down. And the next part is how soon am I putting that $4,000 down? Now I could put that $4,000 down right now. I could write a check, whatever, right now with the contract, or I can say I will put that money down within X number of days of an accepted contract. Now, that's the method I prefer, because why put money down on something you don't know whether you've bought yet or not? Because if I want to buy this property, yeah, I filled out the contract to make the offer, but the seller hasn't accepted yet, so why give them any money? When they give me money, when they give me an acceptance, then it's time to exchange money for that acceptance, not beforehand. So I always choose escrows to be made, and I like 5 days because a lot of times 3 days, if I do this on a Friday, becomes a pain because Saturday and Sunday are considered 1 and 2, all right, if it's accepted on Friday. So I give myself 5 days to make this happen. The next thing is, where is that money going to be held at? Who is the escrow company? Now, a lot of times I prefer that the escrow company actually be the title company that is going to be doing the closing on the property. They do not have to be the same, but I like to do that. So that's who I typically put in there for the escrow company. The next thing is there going to be any additional deposit? Sometimes there is. After an inspection period, for instance, especially for an expensive house, the seller may say, look, I'll take your $4,000, but you're buying my $600,000 house. I want you to have a little bit more money at risk. You're going to have to put more money down anyway. So after your inspection period, I want another $10,000. So that may be put in here. Then you want to put in how much money are you basically going to the bank to finance. And then after you take all those numbers and you put them together, then the last one is how much money are you expected to come to closing. Now, that number, while it is exact for this set of figures, it's not the exact number you're going to go to closing, because there are always other costs for closing. There's doc stamps, there's title insurance, there's other fees that are going to happen. So it's going to be that number plus something. Sometimes it could be less if there are credits that eventually come back. It could be less than that number, but most of the time it's that number plus. All right. Then the next part is, how long does the seller have to decide whether they're going to accept my offer? You don't want to give them a tremendous amount of time, because time is of the essence. You want them to go, look, I made an offer, decide. When you give them a long period of time, that allows other people to come in behind you, put offers, and now they can look at theirs and yours. Shorter time frame, all they have on the table is yours, then they have to wonder, am I going to get another offer? Is it going to happen? And sometimes they'll do what you call a bird in the hand, right? Your offer may be a bird in the hand. So do that. Now, I like putting on there by 6 p.m. because, quite honestly, if you just put a date, it means by midnight. So I like putting 6 p.m. as the cutoff time so that, I know that evening I can go make another offer if I want to on another property. The next thing is the closing date. When do I expect for this whole transaction to be done? Typically, we put a minimum of 30 days here and up to 45 days. That's been our averages. One of the biggest things is how long is it going to take a bank, if we're going to finance this,
to get all the documents and everything processed to get this done. So between 30 and 45 days is a safe bet. I lean more towards the 45-day mark at this time frame, but it could be, 30 days. All right, what's the next thing? Well, a lot of these are all, just standard stuff. These are things that this contract was written by lawyers, and they cover like all of the things that have happened in the state of Florida that people have had to argue about, and they've covered in this document. All right. So the next thing is whether it's assignable. Now, most of the time we put may not assign. Sometimes you need to be able to assign, especially if you're going to put it in a trust, or maybe it is a corporate purchase and they're going to have to create an entity to assign it into that entity. So sometimes there is reasons, but most of the time you're going to put may not assign. The next part is about the financing. Am I buying this with cash or am I buying this with financing? Now, if I'm buying it with financing, what kind of financing? Am I going to get conventional, FHA, VA? So we select what kind, and then you have a date or a number of days that financing has to be loan approval. Now, what that means is that the buyer has gone to the bank, they've made all their application, the bank has looked at everything, and they've come back and they said, we're going to give you a loan approval, and you've got to have that approval in that X number of days. So as long as you've got that loan approval, then you've satisfied that requirement as well. In this case, this was set to 20 days. You can see if it's blank, it goes 30 days, but sometimes we try to get that up a little earlier than that. It also gives the seller an ability to not have to be held out for a long time for a loan that's not going to happen. All right. A lender should be able to tell you in 20 days whether they're going to provide the financing. Now, next parts, closing costs, all standard stuff, no big deal. You might, if you were going to do stuff with closing, you would do it in another section, not necessarily here. And then you've got who designates the title. Kind of our typical standard thing, which is not a requirement. We say standard, it just means customary, not required. There's no law, rule, or regulation that forces you to do this. But most of the time, the seller is the one that designates title. A couple reasons for that. Seller got the original title insurance. They got the original survey form. And most of the time, they're going to use the same title company that they used when they purchased the property. And because of that, there actually can be a savings to the buyer, and the documents would pretty much already be in the file for that title company. In a case recently that I just did, one of the things that came back for title insurance is said, hey, we need the death certificate for the seller. And what they were really talking about was a death certificate from the seller that the seller who currently owns it had purchased the house from. So not the person selling the house, but the person prior to them. Because we used the same title company, they had that death certificate in their file. They just hadn't recorded it with the first time, but they actually had the documentation. And had we gone somewhere else, that would have been another hurdle. That probably would have taken 2 weeks of time to go get that requested from the state, to get that document and do all of that. In this case, by using the same title company, it saved both time, cost, and aggravation. All right, next item, home warranty. Most of the time I put no on this, but that doesn't mean you can't get a home warranty. You are definitely entitled to get one. It just doesn't have to be part of the contract. No requirement for that. You can go get a home warranty at any time. All right, special assessments. Now this means these are tax and municipal special assessments. The county or the city put a new sewer system in. So in your water bill for 10 years, you got an extra $25 as an assessment on your water bill. In this case, we always put that the seller pays those that are, especially on a monthly piece, that they pay those things up to the date that they close, and then the buyer takes those payments over, okay? A lot of people get this confused with condo special assessments. This is not for that. Nothing here with radon or permits or gold, mold. This all just covers you as the buyer. Lead paint, same thing, covers you as the buyer. So here we got property right for inspection to cancel. Now this is something that is important to you as a buyer. This is how many days do you have from the time that the seller has accepted your contract for you to decide that you actually are going to buy this property. Now this is time for you to get a home inspector in, or if you need to get, you know, anybody special, let's say that something was really of concern with the electrical or the plumbing or the roof, you could actually get you know, a roofer or a plumber or, you know, a trade that's specific to that to come in and look at that item as well. And then before that time period, in this case was 10 days, before that time period is up, you decide whether you're moving forward or not. If you're not moving forward, a simple written notice saying, I'm canceling the contract, gets you your escrow money back. If you wait, then that escrow money is basically hard and waiting for the financing at that point. All right, so the next thing is walkthrough. Now, the walkthrough means that the day of or the day before closing, you're going to go back to the property, you're going to walk through it, and you're going to confirm that it is basically in the same condition as it was when you finished your inspection period, that condition, that it, you know, the roof didn't cave in, car didn't run into one of the walls, the toilet didn't break and flood the place, you know, that it's all the same thing. You're going to do all that and say, yes, I'm still moving forward. If there are issues, I've had before, hot water heaters went bad. And so at the last minute, what we had to do was do a little addendum that said, okay, hot water heater went bad. Mr. Seller, we're sorry for your bad luck, but we need some money. And one of two things, they either give you a credit for that, or they give, well, they do a holdback, and the seller takes care of getting it fixed. So let's just say he said, all right, we're going to hold back $800 out of the closing. Mr. Seller, you take care of getting it fixed. Of course, it's much better to just get a credit, because then you take care of getting it fixed on your own, especially since if you're going to go to closing, it's your house, not the seller's house anymore. All right? So, walkthrough inspection. Building permits. If for some reason they had a permit and was never closed out, well, the seller has to close those out. They got to get that done. None of this stuff this is all things that just are here to protect you. We come down to the last piece, which is these are addendums in the property, and these addendums are things that are you know, kind of, I'll say, special circumstances. For instance, it's a condo or an HOA. So, you know, not all houses are a condo, and not all houses are in an HOA. So if this one is, then you got an addendum to cover that section of issues for that particular thing. If you're doing FHA or VA financing, that it also has an addendum to it. This particular property was a condo, and it was in housing for older people, so it was a 55 plus. So it had those two addendums that went on, and this is that section, and there's additional paperwork to fill out for those addendums. Then there are terms, and remember I told you about closing costs. So here's an item here where it says seller to pay $3,500 towards buyer's closing and prepaids at closing. So what that means, the seller is going to contribute $3,500 towards the cost that the buyer has for closing for closing on this property. This is the place where that would be added, and this was added in. And then there were some other things that were just put in there as well. This is where the buyer and the seller would have, as far as a counter, the seller can reject it or the seller can counter this. In this case, it was just accepted. No counter was needed. And then the last piece are the signatures. This is where you're signing on the dotted line that you're making the offer as the buyer, or that you are accepting the offer as a seller, and then, you know, how you get information to each other. All right, I hope that this contract information has helped you, and that maybe you're a little more comfortable with a contract. Obviously, you have any questions, feel free to ask us at any time what those questions are, and we look forward to working with you soon and actually filling out one of these contracts with you. Hope you have a terrific day.